Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. It was one of those quiet, peaceful evenings when everything feels just right. My husband, Tom, and I had been together for nearly 25 years, and over time, our routine had settled into something comfortable, predictable even. It wasn't that the excitement was gone. No, not at all. But life, with all its little challenges, had woven us into a bond that felt like second nature. Tom was my rock, the person who knew me better than anyone. But on that night, when his friend, his longtime best friend, said something that caught me off guard, everything I thought I knew about our relationship, about myself, suddenly began to shift. It was a Friday, and the house had that warm, inviting feel to it, the soft hum of the dishwasher in the background, the flicker of candlelight casting gentle shadows on the walls. We were having a small dinner at home, just the three of us, Tom, me, and Steve, Tom's childhood friend who had always been a part of our lives. Steve had this way about him, a calm yet intense energy, the kind that made you feel like you were the only person in the room when he spoke to you. Over the years, I'd grown to see Steve as family. But on this particular night, something about him was different. There was a shift, something I couldn't quite put my finger on, but it gnawed at me, tugging at the edge of my awareness. Tom had always been the life of the party, full of jokes and laughter, his loud voice filling the room with warmth. Steve, on the other hand, had this quieter, more reserved nature, but when he spoke, people listened. I didn't know why it was happening now, but as I looked across the dinner table at Steve, something felt off. I pushed the feeling aside, chalking it up to the slight buzz from the wine and the ease of the evening, but as the night wore on, that subtle tension kept building. It wasn't anything in particular. No glaring argument or harsh words exchanged, but every time Steve glanced at me, there was a depth in his eyes, something unspoken. I tried to ignore it, to focus on the conversation, but it was like a silent thread that kept pulling at my attention. I could feel Tom's eyes occasionally flicking between Steve and me, but he never said anything. He was his usual self, distracted, lost in the casual flow of the evening, never sensing that something was quietly shifting beneath the surface. Then it happened. The moment Steve opened his mouth, and everything changed. We had just finished dessert, chocolate mousse, Tom's favorite, and the conversation had begun to slow, the relaxed warmth of the evening settling into comfortable silence. That's when Steve spoke up, his voice low but steady, carrying a weight that made me pause mid-sip of my wine. "You know," Steve said, looking directly at me, "I've always thought you were more than just Tom's wife." I froze, the glass of wine in my hand suddenly feeling heavier. Tom was still half listening, distracted by something on his phone, but I felt Steve's words land like a quiet but undeniable truth in the space between us. His gaze held mine for a moment longer than usual, a flicker of something behind his eyes, a secret just waiting to be spoken. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, though my heart had begun to race. Steve leaned back in his chair, his fingers lightly tapping the edge of his wine glass. "I don't know how to explain it," he said, a half-smile tugging at his lips. "It's just that there's always been this connection between us, don't you think?" I looked over at Tom, hoping for some kind of reassurance, but he was still absorbed in his phone, completely oblivious. It felt like a dream, a moment where time had slowed down, and I was standing at the edge of something, unsure if I should step forward or retreat. "Steve, I started, but the words didn't come out. What was I supposed to say? Could I ignore the truth of what he was saying, or was it something that needed to be acknowledged? My mind was racing, every possible outcome flashing before my eyes. "I don't mean it like that," Steve quickly added, sensing my discomfort. "It's not like I've ever wanted anything. It's just that I've always respected you, really seen you. You're not just a wife, a mother, or a caretaker. You're you." He paused, letting the words hang in the air between us. It was as if a veil had been lifted, exposing something raw, something that had always been there but had never been acknowledged. I had always seen myself as Tom's wife, as the one who supported him, who helped hold everything together. But hearing Steve say that, hearing him strip away all those labels and see me, really see me, it shook something deep inside. For a moment, there was nothing but silence in the room. Tom's voice finally broke through, but it was a distant sound, like he was somewhere else entirely. "What's going on? You two look so serious. Let's play something, huh? Maybe a round of cards?" I smiled weakly, my heart still thudding in my chest. Steve turned to Tom, nodding in agreement, but his eyes, those eyes that had just laid bare something so intimate, lingered on me for a moment longer. And in that silence, I felt a connection, a spark, something unexpected but undeniable. The rest of the night passed in a blur. We played cards, laughed, and talked about nothing important. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us all, something unspoken, but very real. As the evening ended, Tom and Steve sent their goodbyes, and I found myself standing at the door, watching them leave. I turned back into the house, feeling like I had just stepped off the edge of something unknown. The night wasn't over for me. It was only just beginning. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of unease, as if the ground beneath me had shifted while I was sleeping. I had always been someone who prided myself on being in control of my emotions, my thoughts, my life. But now, everything felt uncertain. Steve's words echoed in my mind, replaying over and over, each repetition digging deeper into my thoughts. "You're not just a wife, a mother, or a caretaker. You're you." It was a simple sentence, yet it had felt like an unspoken confession. It was as if he saw something in me that I had been blind to for years. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Was he simply paying me a compliment, or was there more to it? And why did it feel so significant? I had always been just Tom's wife, and maybe that was enough for some people, but it felt like Steve was offering me something more. It felt dangerous. I rolled over in bed, glancing at Tom beside me. He was still asleep, his peaceful expression a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I didn't want to disturb him. He was always so calm in the mornings, so grounded. I envied that about him, how effortlessly he navigated life. But me? I was tangled up in my thoughts, in the confusion of what had transpired the night before. I tried to shake it off, to push the thoughts to the back of my mind. I had a day ahead of me, and there was no room for lingering doubts or fantasies. But the more I tried to focus on the mundane tasks, making coffee, preparing breakfast, the more I felt the weight of what had happened. I found myself replaying Steve's words in my head, analyzing them, trying to decipher his intentions. But every time I tried to rationalize it, the feeling of his gaze on me lingered, a memory etched into my skin. As the morning passed, I couldn't escape the nagging thought that something had changed between Steve and me. It wasn't just a compliment, it was a recognition of something deeper, something I had never allowed myself to fully acknowledge. A part of me wondered if he had seen a side of me that I hadn't even noticed, a side that had been buried beneath years of routine and responsibilities. But it was more than that, wasn't it? It was the way he looked at me, the way his words had shifted the way I saw myself. I felt seen in a way I hadn't felt in a long time, and it terrified me. Around noon, I decided to call my sister Karen. She always had a way of cutting through my confusion, offering the kind of advice that made sense even when everything felt like a tangled mess. I needed to talk about it, to get it off my chest. But even as I picked up the phone, I hesitated. I wasn't sure how to begin. How do you tell someone that your husband's best friend has made you feel something you didn't expect? Hello. Karen's voice rang through the receiver, warm and familiar. Hey, it's me, I said, my voice tight. I need to talk. What's going on? She asked, her tone immediately shifting to one of concern. You sound off. What happened? I took a deep breath, unsure where to start. It's Steve, Tom's friend. Last night he said something that, I don't know how to explain it, but it's been bugging me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Karen spoke slowly. What did he say? I closed my eyes, the words coming back to me with surprising clarity. He said I wasn't just Tom's wife, that he saw me for who I really am, not just a wife or a mother. What, me? Karen was silent for a moment, processing what I had said. That's a strange thing to say, especially if it wasn't in some kind of joking way. I don't know, I replied, shaking my head even though she couldn't see it. It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like he was seeing me in a way that no one has in a long time. Not even Tom. And it hit me, you know? I don't know what to do with that. Karen let out a soft sigh. Look, I don't know what's going on with Steve, but I do know this. You are your own person. And sometimes, when you've been in a relationship for as long as you have, it's easy to forget that. To lose yourself in the roles of being a wife, a mother, to lose the parts of you that made you you before all of that. I don't want to lose that, I said quietly, the weight of her words sinking in. But I didn't expect it to come from him. It feels like I'm suddenly seeing myself through someone else's eyes. And it's unsettling. Maybe it's time to take a step back, Karen suggested. Not to make any decisions yet, but to just give yourself some space to think. You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just let it breathe for a bit. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Her advice made sense, but it didn't make the feelings go away. I'll try. Thanks, Karen. We said our goodbyes, and I hung up the phone, feeling both comforted and more confused than before. It was clear I needed to sort through my emotions, to really sit with what had happened and what it meant. But I couldn't shake the sense that something was about to change. As the day wore on, I found myself thinking about Steve more than I should have. His words, his look, everything about him seemed to have gotten under my skin. I told myself that I was just overthinking it, that it was nothing more than a fleeting moment. But deep down, I knew it was more than that. The question lingered in the air. Was this a sign of something I needed to confront, or was I just imagining things? That night, when Tom came home, I didn't know how to look at him. How could I tell him that I was struggling with something that didn't involve him at all, but still felt like it might? How could I bring up Steve without it sounding strange? So I did what I always did when things felt too complicated. I buried it. I smiled, kissed him on the cheek, and pretended like everything was just as it should be. But as the night wore on, I knew that I couldn't keep pretending forever. The shift was there, hanging in the air between us, and it wasn't going to disappear on its own. I just didn't know what to do about it yet. The days after that night were filled with an undercurrent of tension that I couldn't ignore. It wasn't loud or obvious. It was subtle, like the quiet hum of electricity just beneath the surface of everything I did. I went through my usual routines, making dinner, picking up after Tom, checking in with the kids. On the outside, nothing had changed. But inside, something was stirring, something that I didn't fully understand but couldn't push away. It was the way Steve's words had started to shape my thoughts. I'm more than just a wife. I couldn't stop thinking about it, and each time I saw Tom, I felt this strange sense of distance, as if there was a wall between us that hadn't been there before. It wasn't that I loved him any less. It was that something in me had awakened, something that had been dormant for years. The hardest part was that I wasn't sure how to talk about it. How do you tell your husband that someone else's words made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? How do you admit that you were seeing yourself differently, even though the world around you stayed the same? I decided to call Steve. The thought of it made my stomach flutter, but I couldn't let this go on any longer. If I was going to make sense of what had happened, I needed to confront it. I dialed his number, my hand shaking slightly as the phone rang. "Hello." Steve's voice answered on the other end. "Steve, it's Karen." I lied, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I had no idea why I said it, but in that moment I needed to hide behind something, behind the illusion of normalcy. "Karen? What's up?" he replied, a bit surprised but not suspicious. I just wanted to check in, see how you were doing. How's everything?" There was a pause on the line, as if Steve was wondering where this was going. "Everything's good. Work's busy. You know how it is. But I'm guessing you didn't call just to ask how I was. What's going on, really?" His voice was kind but firm, as if he knew there was more beneath the surface. I swallowed hard. I've been thinking about something you said the other night," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "When you told me I wasn't just Tom's wife, that I was something more." There was another long silence, and I could hear Steve's breath on the other end, steady and even. "I didn't mean to make things awkward," he said softly, his voice quieter now, almost as if he was choosing his words carefully. "But I meant what I said. You are more than that, Karen. You always have been." I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of emotion rush through me. The words were simple, but they carried so much weight. I wasn't sure what I had expected, maybe for him to apologize, or to brush it off. But instead, he was acknowledging something I'd never let myself fully accept, that I was worthy of being seen for who I truly was. "I don't know what to do with that," I confessed, my voice trembling. It's been bothering me, Steve. It's like I've been living in this role for so long that I've forgotten who I really am, who I was before all of this." "Karen, I don't want to complicate things for you," Steve said gently, his voice steady but full of concern. "I'm not saying anything to make you feel uncomfortable. But I've known you for a long time, and I've always admired you, not just as Tom's wife, but as you, the person you are. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're defined by just one thing. You deserve more than that." I felt a lump form in my throat. It was strange, comforting, but also unsettling. How could something so simple be so profound? I've been so focused on everyone else, on being everything for everyone, that I forgot about myself. I whispered, more to myself than to him. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, Steve. I don't know what to do." "You don't have to do anything right now," Steve said, his voice softening. "Take your time. Just don't ignore what you're feeling. Don't bury it." I nodded, even though I knew he couldn't see me. "Thank you, Steve. I think I needed to hear that." We said our goodbyes, and I ended the call, staring at the phone in my hand, the weight of the conversation still settling around me. I felt a strange mix of relief and fear. I hadn't expected to feel so raw, so exposed. But I also knew that Steve's words had unlocked something inside me, something I couldn't ignore any longer. The next day, I decided to talk to Tom. I had avoided it for as long as I could, but the longer I held on to this secret, the harder it became to look him in the eyes. I had to be honest with him, not just for the sake of our marriage, but for myself. We were sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, the quiet hum of the morning settling over us. Tom looked up from his newspaper, sensing the shift in the air. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice soft but full of concern. I set my cup down, my hands suddenly trembling. "I need to talk to you about something." Tom put his paper down and leaned in, his full attention now on me. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath. "It's about Steve. He said something to me the other night, something that's been bothering me ever since." Tom's face tightened, the mention of his best friend immediately putting him on alert. "What did he say?" "He said that I'm not just Tom's wife, that I'm more than that." I paused, trying to gauge Tom's reaction. It's not that I'm upset with him, but it made me realize something. I've spent so many years being just a wife and mother that I've forgotten who I am outside of that. And I don't know what to do with that. Tom was silent for a long moment. The look on his face was one I couldn't quite place. Confusion, concern, and maybe a touch of hurt. "I never meant for you to feel like you were just a wife," he said finally, his voice low. "But if I'm being honest, I've been so focused on everything else. Work, the kids, that I've forgotten to ask how you're doing. To check in with you. Maybe I've been taking you for granted, Karen." The honesty in his voice cut through the tension, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. It wasn't the response I had feared. It was a moment of vulnerability, a rare glimpse into the man I'd shared my life with. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't just need to rediscover myself, I needed to rediscover us. The days that followed were a blur of small but significant changes. Tom and I had an honest conversation about everything, about our marriage, our roles, and what we wanted moving forward. We didn't have all the answers, but we did have something we hadn't had in a long time, a renewed sense of understanding and respect for one another. There were no grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but it felt like we were starting over in a way. I wasn't just Tom's wife anymore. I was Karen, a woman with her own identity, desires, and dreams. Tom and I found ourselves talking more, really talking, about things that had once seemed too trivial or difficult to discuss. We laughed, we cried, and we faced the uncomfortable truths we'd both been avoiding. There were moments of tension, yes, but there were also moments of deep connection that made it all worthwhile. We were learning how to be a team again, not just in name, but in spirit. One evening, about a week after our conversation, I decided to take a walk. I needed some space to think, to process everything that had happened in such a short time. The evening air was cool, the sky painted in shades of pink and purple as the sun set. As I walked through the quiet neighborhood, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace settling over me. It was as if the weight of the world had been lifted, even if only for a moment. I found myself walking by the old park where Tom and I had spent many afternoons in our younger years, sitting on the swings, talking about our hopes for the future. It felt strange, yet comforting, to be back here alone, without the noise of daily life. As I sat on the swing, I let my mind wander. I'm more than just a wife. I'm more than just a mother. I am Karen, whole and complete, with all my imperfections, my desires, my dreams. The words echoed in my mind, and for the first time in a long time, they felt true. There was no shame in them, no guilt, just acceptance. I thought about Steve, about how his words had unsettled me at first, but how they had ultimately opened my eyes to something I had been neglecting for far too long. I didn't need to rely on anyone else to define me. I was enough, just as I was. I wasn't angry with Steve. On the contrary, I felt gratitude. He had unknowingly helped me see that I had been putting myself second for too long, and now it was time for me to step into my own light. As the evening grew darker, I stood up from the swing and headed back home. I felt lighter, freer, like I was walking toward a new chapter of my life, one where I wasn't afraid to embrace who I truly was. When I walked through the door, Tom was sitting at the kitchen table, waiting for me. His face lit up when he saw me, and I knew, without a doubt, that this was the man I had chosen, the man I loved. And yet, I also knew that I had chosen myself in a way I hadn't before. We didn't need to say anything at that moment. Words weren't necessary. The quiet understanding between us spoke volumes. I had found my own way, and he had found his place beside me, supporting me in ways he never had before. "I'm home," I said softly, my voice full of a new strength. Tom stood up, walked over, and took my hand in his. "I know," he said, his voice filled with warmth. "I can see it." And in that moment, I realized that the real change wasn't just in me, it was in us. We had learned to grow together, not apart. We had learned that love wasn't just about fulfilling roles or expectations. It was about mutual respect, support, and the courage to face the truths that lay beneath the surface. "I love you," I whispered, and it wasn't just the words I had said 1,000 times before. This time, it meant something more. "I love you too," Tom replied, pulling me into a gentle embrace. As I stood there in his arms, I understood now more than ever. True growth comes from embracing who you are, from being honest with yourself and with those you love. And while life might not always go as planned, sometimes the most unexpected moments, like a conversation with a friend or a simple, honest reflection, can change everything for the better. And so, as we moved forward together, I knew that we were beginning something new. Not a new chapter in the traditional sense, but a new understanding, a new respect, and most importantly, a new love, one that was based on who we were, not who we thought we should be. And I knew, deep down, that we'd be okay. More than okay. We'd be stronger, together and apart, because we finally learned to embrace the person we truly were.